I need to tell you about a photograph. It was taken inside a courtroom in Bangkok on November 20th, 2024. The room had been in session for 3 hours. The judges had spent 3 hours reading a verdict, 3 hours of documented evidence, forensic findings, financial records, witness testimony, and the names of the dead. And at the end of those 3 hours, the court sentenced a 36-year-old woman named Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn to death. The photograph was taken at that moment. She was smiling, not a nervous smile, not the kind of expression that flickers across someone's face when they are trying to hold themselves together. A smile, composed, present, as if the moment she had just been handed a death sentence in a room full of the families of people she had killed was simply another moment in an ordinary day. I have been doing this long enough to know that people process shock in unexpected ways. That courtroom behavior is not always what it looks like. That there are explanations, but I keep coming back to that photograph, because by the time you understand everything that led to that moment, the 8 years, the 14 people, the 8 provinces, the 26,500 documents, the smile stops being surprising. And that is the most disturbing thing about this entire case. We are going to come back to that photograph, I promise. But first, you need to understand something. Something that makes this case different from almost every other serial killer case you have ever heard of. Nobody saw her coming. Not for 8 years. Stay with me. Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn grew up in Ratchaburi province, west of Bangkok. By the time she was in her late 20s, she had built exactly the kind of life that looks, from the outside, completely unremarkable. She had friends, many of them, people who described her as warm, fun to be around, the kind of person who stayed in touch, who showed up, who made plans and kept them. She moved in circles that included working professionals, police officers, government employees, people with stable incomes and savings and the ordinary vulnerabilities that come with trusting someone you have known for years. She had been married to a police lieutenant colonel named Withun Rangsiwutthaporn. They later divorced, but continued living together. Her ex-husband was a serving officer, a deputy superintendent. I want you to hold that detail. We will come back to it. On July 7th, 2015, a woman named Montathip Kawin died in a condominium in Bangkok's Thonglor area. She was found by people who knew her. Her death was recorded. An official cause was assigned. Nobody investigated Sararat. Montathip was 32 years old. She had plans. She had people who loved her. She had a life that was simply over. On a Tuesday in July, in an apartment in Bangkok. And for 8 years, the full truth of what happened to her would remain buried. 8 years. I need you to sit with that number as we go through what comes next, because the story of the Am Cyanide case, the name Thai media would eventually give to Sararat, is not just the story of 14 murders. It is the story of how 14 murders happened in plain sight across 8 provinces over 8 years, while the woman responsible attended funerals, maintained friendships, and went on with her life. Here is how she operated. Sararat did not choose strangers. She did not hunt in the dark or rely on opportunity. She chose people she knew, people who trusted her, people who had, in almost every case, lent her money or been defrauded by her, people who had something she needed to make disappear along with them. The method was potassium cyanide, a chemical that interferes with the body's ability to use oxygen at the cellular level. In sufficient doses, death can come within minutes to hours. In smaller doses, the early symptoms, dizziness, nausea, confusion, are easy to misread. easy to attribute to something else. Food poisoning, a sudden illness, a heart that simply gave out. She would arrange to meet her victims, share food, share drink, and somewhere in that ordinary social interaction, a meal, a trip, an afternoon together, she would introduce the poison. After each death, she took what she came for: cash, phones, bags, valuables, the things that could be converted into money, the money that could be fed into the gambling accounts that were consuming everything she earned and everything she stole. Between 2020 and 2023, police financial records showed that Sararat had a cash flow of over 95 million baht moving through her bank accounts. 95 million baht. And she was in debt. Deeply, desperately in debt, with financial trails linking her to 10 separate mule accounts connected to online gambling platforms. During 2021 and 2022, the gambling losses accelerated, and so did the deaths. Nitya Keobupa, August 23, 2020. Nakhon Pathom, Sawitri Bajrirak, November 25, 2020. Mukdahan, Darini Theptawi, December 13, 2020. Nakhon Pathom, Surat Torp, January 6, 2021. Kanchanaburi, Police Captain Yingkanda Tarai, August 9, 2022. Found dead in her own car in Nakhon Pathom. Read those dates again. 5 deaths in less than 2 years. 5 people who had trusted Sararat enough to share a meal with her. 5 families who received phone calls they were not ready for. And still, nobody was looking at her, because the deaths were happening in different provinces, different jurisdictions, different investigating officers who had no reason to compare notes, no system prompting them to connect a death in Mukdahan to a death in Kanchanaburi, to a death in Bangkok 7 years earlier. She was operating in the gaps between systems, and she knew it. April 14th, 2023. Sararat and her friend Siraporn Kanwong, known to friends as Nong Khoi, went on a trip together to a river in Ratchaburi province. A day out, the kind of thing friends do. Siraporn was 32 years old. She worked hard. She had a mother named Thongpin who, by every account, was the center of her world. Siraporn died that day. The official initial assessment pointed toward natural causes, the kind of finding that 8 times before across 8 provinces had closed a file and ended an investigation before it began. But Thongpin Kyachanasiri, 63 years old, a mother who had just lost her daughter, refused. She did not accept natural causes. She did not accept the first answer she was given. She pushed for a full toxicology examination. She contacted investigators and demanded they look harder. She is the reason this case broke open. Not the system. Not a pattern recognition alert. Not a cross-provincial database flagging a serial killer. A mother who would not stop asking questions. The toxicology came back positive for potassium cyanide. Within days, investigators who had worked separate cases in separate provinces began, for the first time, comparing notes. The pattern that had been invisible across 8 years became suddenly impossible to ignore. A name that appeared at the edge of multiple files. A woman who had been present at too many deaths across too many places. On April 25th, 2023, 11 days after Siraporn Kanwong died on a riverbank in Ratchaburi, Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn was arrested. 11 days. The gap between the crack appearing in the case and the arrest was 11 days, and the gap between the first suspected murder and that arrest was 8 years. What followed was one of the largest criminal investigations in Thai history. Deputy Police Chief Surachate Hakparn took personal command of the case. He assembled investigative teams from multiple departments: the Central Investigation Bureau, the Crime Suppression Division, forensic specialists, financial crime analysts. Professor Wirachai Futawong from Kasetsart University's Chemistry Department worked to establish the cyanide evidence trail across cases that had been filed years apart. Over 3 months, investigators interviewed more than 900 witnesses. They reviewed 26,500 documents. 26,500 documents. When Surachate presented the findings to the press on June 30th, 2023, he said something that stopped the room. This is a historic case in Thailand. Even Jack the Ripper from the UK did not kill this many. The final count: 15 poisoning cases, 14 deaths, 1 survivor, whose identity has never been publicly disclosed. Cases spread across 8 provinces, spanning 8 years. 80 criminal charges filed, including 14 counts of premeditated murder, a record in Thai criminal history. And as investigators dug deeper into the connection between Sararat and the legal system, something else surfaced. Her ex-husband, the police lieutenant colonel she had continued living with after their divorce, had not simply failed to notice what she was doing. He had helped her. Police Lieutenant Colonel Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn was charged with hiding evidence and helping Sararat evade arrest. He was convicted. He received 16 months. 16 months for helping conceal 14 murders. I am going to leave that number there without comment, because I think it speaks for itself. The question that investigators and journalists and ordinary Thai people spent months asking was the same question you are probably asking right now. How? How does someone kill 14 people over 8 years across 8 provinces and remain invisible? The answer is not comforting. It is not a story about one exceptional monster who was simply too clever for the system. It is a story about a system that was not built to see this particular shape of crime. Provincial boundaries that created jurisdictional walls, a lack of cross-agency pattern recognition, an ex-husband in law enforcement who was, at minimum, not asking the right questions. She did not outsmart Thailand. She fell through the gaps that Thailand had not yet closed. November 20th, 2024. Bangkok Criminal Court, Ratchadaphisek Road. The 4 judges had been reading the verdict for 3 hours. 3 hours of documented evidence. The financial records, the toxicology, the witness testimony, the forensic chemistry that established beyond reasonable doubt that on April 14th, 2023, Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn had contaminated Siraporn Khan Wong's consumables with potassium cyanide, causing her death, and had then stolen her belongings, valued at 154,630 baht. Death sentence. In the gallery, Thongpin Kiachanasiri held a photograph of her daughter, and across the courtroom, Sararat smiled. That is the photograph I told you about at the beginning of this video. That is the moment I have been carrying since I started researching this case. Not because a smile at sentencing is unprecedented. People process extreme moments in unexpected ways, and her lawyer later said she was composed because she intended to appeal, but because when you know everything that came before that smile. The 14 people, the 8 years, the 26,500 documents, the mother who would not stop asking questions, the one survivor somewhere in Thailand who is living with what happened to them. The smile feels like a conclusion, like the last piece of a portrait that was always going to look exactly like this. In February 2026, a Bangkok court handed Sararat her second death sentence for the murder of Police Major Nipa Sayenchin, poisoned on April 1st, 2023. 2 weeks before Saraporn. Toxicology confirmed cyanide throughout the victim's body. Motive: financial disputes, concealment of fraud. 2 death sentences down, 12 trials remaining. 14 families, 14 cases, 14 separate days in court, where a mother or a father or a sibling will sit in a gallery and wait for a verdict that should have come years ago. I want to end with Thong Pin, 63 years old, standing outside a courthouse holding a photograph of her daughter. After the verdict, she gave a short statement to reporters. She spoke directly to Saraporn, not to the cameras, not to the assembled press, but to her daughter. "You have nothing to worry about," she said. "I have read a lot of victim impact statements. I have spent a lot of time with the words that families find at the end of cases like this. And I keep coming back to those 5 words. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are not. You have nothing to worry about." A mother telling her dead daughter that the thing is done, that the weight is lifted, that she can rest. Sararat Rangsiwutthaporn has been sentenced to death twice. 12 more verdicts are coming. The law, in this case, is doing what it is supposed to do. But Monthathip Cowan died in 2015. Her family waited 9 years for justice to even begin arriving. And the one survivor, whoever they are, wherever they are, woke up this morning knowing they were on that list. That Sararat had chosen them, that the only reason they are alive is that the dose was wrong, or the timing was off, or some small variable fell differently than it did for 14 other people. Justice is being delivered, slowly, case by case, trial by trial, smile by smile. Whether that is enough, I will leave that with you. Remember the 14, not the smile.